Well, good morning. I guess I should say, especially to those of you in Mountain Time Zone who are joining us today for another episode of the Nebraska Ed Leadership Live Show. This is our 7th episode, actually. And so really excited to be here. I'm Andrew Easton with the ESU Coordinating Council, and I've gotten the opportunity to MC this series all the way through as a collaborative effort with the NDEC team, who I'm going to introduce here from the top. And so today we have with us Julie Downing and Jeff Gilbertson. They'll be leading our conversation today, and they work with the teacher and principal performance standards here in Nebraska. They know this work of leadership all too well, and we're grateful also to NCSA for being a supporting partner of this show. Throughout this entire spring, we've been focusing on this conversation with the simple aim of creating a space for Nebraska education leaders to connect, share, and grow together, which is why we wanted to welcome Pam Brezenski today to join us as our featured leader. She is the project manager of the Get SET Nebraska program, and SET stands for Special Education Teachers, so I'll kind of get that out there from the start. She's also an employee of ESU 13, which is why we're going to have Julie Downing go ahead and give her the introduction. So without further ado, welcome everyone to the show. And Julie, tell us a little more about Pam.
Well, I'm so excited to have Pam on board today. Pam and I have been colleagues for a while out at ESU 13 in the Panhandle, and she just brings so much experience in the special ed side of the world. Like you said, she is the project manager for Get SET, which has been a big partnership between 13, NDE, Children, Youth, Families and Schools, Nebraska Center on Research, a lot of partnership work there. That is sunsetting for Pam, and so she's going to be maybe sharing with us what her next adventure is, but she comes with 20 years of experience in education. She's been an administrator, she's been a teacher, she's been a special educator, she's been in rural, urban districts, Arizona, North Dakota, Nebraska, constantly championing equitable and inclusive education for our students. She's got lots of degrees from lots of places, and we're just really, really excited to get to hear her stories of leadership. So let's jump in. And our first question is really just about that. What are those pivotal experiences, Pam, that have shaped your journey from the classroom to state leadership, and what has influenced you along the way?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say it's almost everyone I've met in education. You know, everybody has a piece in who you become, I think, in the direction that you go. But I remember in my later classroom years, I was actually a practicum advisor and a student teacher advisor. And I also led some plan on file folks in North Dakota, which were teachers that were brand new to the field, that were getting their degree and coming in. And I just saw the excitement, and I really enjoyed supporting them. I enjoyed having student teachers in the classroom. And a lot of them would tell me, you know, you need to go to the higher level and teach, and you need to do this. You've got so much knowledge to share. And I think their words and their advice kind of led me on that path of getting my doctorate and teaching at the university level and on the side. And then moving to ESU 13 as a transition coordinator. That was my step outside the classroom. And that was a hard decision to make, but Laura Barrett was an amazing resource to have out there and to kind of guide me and teach me in that, because it is very different being in that type of leadership and at that ESU level leadership than it was to be in the classroom. So it took a lot of that. And then an opportunity came up to be the special education director at ESU 13. And so I think my staff is really who kind of formed me in that and taught me so much about how to really listen and to be a good leader and to look for supporting ways to support people in their individual ways. So I would say it's really everyone that has been with me along the way. And I actually am taking my next steps back into the classroom. And I'm so excited to have those individuals support me now.
What I love about that is, you know, you and I have worked for ESU 13 together a long time. And when I came, one of the administrators said to me, you know, people come to ESU and they think they're going to stay for a year and they end up staying a lifetime. And it is maybe not unique to ESU 13 and maybe not even unique to education, but it is all those people that become our community and carry us through careers. And it sounds like that's really the heart of your story. So
Yes,
thank you for sharing. And I love the full circle moment for you to have all of these experiences and then be able to return to a classroom and continue to support those up and coming educators, because we need all the support for them we can get. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. And Jeff was going to have a follow-up question here for you, actually. So I'll go ahead and turn things over to Jeff.
Well, thank you, Andrew. And thank you, Pam, for joining us today. I was interested, Pam, what is one specific shift that you've seen schools make through initiatives like Get SET Nebraska that have made a measurable impact on both teacher retention and student outcomes?
Oh, I think it's just the general shift from everyone. It's been a focus. It's been in strategic goals for districts. It's been ESU focused goals. It's been state focused goals. And I think the shift is putting effort and energy into retention-based programs. We actually have preliminary data that shows we grew this year in our special education retention data. So I think it shows that when individuals put programs into place and they work together. And I think the biggest part of that is Get SET Nebraska is a large part of teacher retention in the state. But also there have been many other departments at NDE and ESUs that have been working on increasing the total teacher population. And I think when you bring things together and people work together and collaborate, you see great change. And we are starting to see that. You can see in the teacher vacancy survey that there's been some growth, there's been some improvement. You can see it in we call it the special education data retention system. Like I said, the preliminary data is showing that we've increased retention again this year. So I think just the strategic leadership focus on impacting retention. It's done individual ways in different districts, but that's what Nebraska is we have to look at what is right for each district.
That and the Get SET retention data, you've got 5 years of data now?
Yeah, we do. And we're actually on the Nebraska Education Profile, and individuals can look up their districts and they can see 3-year trends, 5-year trends. So our main goal has been providing that data, because people can't make decisions if they don't have strong data to start from. So that's been a big part of it too, is everyone is providing that.
Yeah, and it's sort of lives at the heart of SEED too. That teacher vacancy survey data is some data that we're pretty involved with, and it's a bright spot to see what's happening with the Get SET data, and it's a bright spot to see that turning the right direction, because it was definitely a concern. And I agree with you. There have been some really strategic plans to focus on that, and the impacts we're starting to see them. They're starting to be visible. You worked with us early on the SEED team, incorporating our Nebraska teacher and principal performance standards into your Get SET work. And so, when I talk about teacher leadership, that's something that's kind of on my heart, leading from the classroom. So how can schools intentionally grow teacher leaders that expand their influence? You have led student teachers, you have led groups of teachers. What is your advice on that work so that we don't lose that direct impact on students?
I think that question is kind of twofold, because we have to give them opportunities. I think a lot of times we don't always think those individuals might want to take them, and they may not know that they want to take them. Sometimes we have to offer those opportunities for them to connect with and show. If the university hadn't contacted me and said, hey, would you take a student teacher? I wouldn't have ever known that I actually loved doing that. And then the second part is, I think we have to provide some strong guidance. In Get SET Nebraska, we connect mentors, and that's a leadership role. Being a mentor within our building is a leadership role. And we provide guidance, and our program is very structured, where they have steps and resources to support those mentees. And what we've heard from those individuals, the mentors, we've supported 115 teams. And almost all of them have said it's been so nice to have something that's put together, and we're not just having a random conversation. We're having a focused conversation that covers information that's important that I might have forgotten about because, 20 years of teaching, it's hard to remember everything. And then the problem solving decision making, they're there to guide and support those teachers. And then they also get to help them grow and learn from all of the statewide data and goal setting and everything that comes. And they've all said it's been so nice because I'm not in the boss role, but I'm actually in a support role because I have a structure to follow. And I think that's been huge. But you have to give them the opportunity, and then you have to give them the resources to be successful.
Yeah, it really is an ecosystem. Like, we take those university students and mentor them into a system, and like, we're really all just raising teachers, right?
Absolutely.
Raising them up. Andrew?
Yeah, well, as you're sharing that, it kind of reminded me of our previous conversations, Pam, on the podcast that we get a chance to host from the ESUCC. And so I remember back when we were talking about this Get SET initiative as a pilot that had a small number. And then you just referenced how many districts? 115? Is that what you
We've
mentioned?
had 115 that have actually received project manager support, but we've also had probably over 200 that have accessed the program. So they could be using pieces of it or portions of it, but 115 have sought support from myself as project manager.
And that's phenomenal. And I so appreciated then when we talked about the program and I got a chance to revisit that with an actual district team and talk about the different roles and how they utilize those resources, embedded those kind of in there, onboarding for those new teachers. And that has to feel really gratifying too, to watch that impact sort of like scale over time. So a moment ago, you were saying it's really great to have folks usher you into the space where you are able to then be working statewide or have access it through an initiative like what you run. But you speak a little bit to what it's been like to grow into that role. So maybe that's kind of the next step of that idea, is to say that somewhere between envisioning the pilot and reaching 115 different schools, there was a lot that took place and probably shaped your perspective as well.
Yeah, so we started with a pilot of 4 schools. Our goal was 6, and we had 4 that had continued and joined on. And the biggest thing that I think I would like to call out is our CYFS data team and everyone, because it was so critical to have the data pieces come together and be able to guide us on our journey, because we used every opinion, every bit of quantitative, every bit of qualitative data to guide the next steps. So I always say that the program was built by Nebraska teachers and administrators, because we gave a structure, we gave a platform, and then they provided us information and feedback that allowed us to change it to meet their needs better. It's very difficult to reach all of the needs across the state of Nebraska, rural, urban, everywhere. And so we knew we had a big task that we took on. And listening was our biggest thing, of asking, what could we change? What could we do? And so then when we moved into our scale up, we took that pilot data and changed some of the programming. And that's when it became an on-demand program. And that mattered because then we could get that outreach. We didn't have to have one person giving that outreach. And then the scale up data that we had really guided us into the overall program. It ended up actually having 3 options for mentorship because of the needs that were shared during the process of the scale up. And we have a 1-year program, and then we have split that into a 2-year program for those schools that don't have the time and maybe need it to be put over a longer period of time. And then we also added a level 3 outside placement setting teacher program, because our teachers in those types of outside school placement settings said, this really doesn't relate to us. So we took the components that did relate, added some additional components, and it shaped the 3 options we now have for those teachers. So we're hoping to meet people's needs better through those options.
It's just really cool to listen to you talk about how we've moved, and you and I have been in education a while, from really a compliance-driven system to one that, and I know you have such a heart for genuine inclusion and student-centered work. To hear you talk about how that happened and all the pieces and all the moving parts that your leadership helped coordinate, really, to move that forward. So the next question is for those people in leadership who get overwhelmed with the balance. So when you're trying to lead at the system level, whether that's a school district or the state, how do you balance that big picture stuff and still stay grounded in the day-to-day realities that we know educators and classrooms face?
That's a really big question, because that was
big picture too.
That was the challenge that we faced. We know that we are not, Get SET Nebraska wasn't, the only thing that schools were implementing. We knew that from the beginning. And I think just understanding and empathizing with the school structure and knowing that helped us kind of begin to frame things. We actually came out with a document because we were listening. We have the components of special education induction and mentorship. And time is a big thing. And we know that schools can't always take the time to implement things they want to. They've got 5 other things on the fire, and they're going like crazy, and they just can't get it there. So what we did is we created a self-assessment checklist for districts that is based on comprehensive induction and mentoring critical components. So we have 6 elements that they can evaluate themselves on to identify what are we already putting into our schools and what would we really need to implement. Then we created a matrix of basically a guidance document after each self-assessment of, if you scored yourself low on these areas, these are the parts of Get SET Nebraska you may want to look at. So we've allowed them really the opportunity to evaluate their system, see what they have time for, see what they already have implemented within the district, and then take that and use the pieces of the program. We give them page numbers, document types, all of those things within that decision tool that they can use to still have a full comprehensive mentoring and induction program that may or may not include some of those Get SET Nebraska features.
I'll bet people appreciate like the efficiency and sort of differentiation of that.
Well, and I hope that they're able to see that they do have great things going. That was one thing we learned early on, is that so many schools said that our conversations that our program brought around allowed them to see the good things that were happening. Sometimes we always focus on maybe the critical issues or the concerns that we have. And so I hope that document also helps them see they have so many, when they can say, yes, we have that piece. Yes, we have that piece, that they have been planning for that. But we just kind of bring it full circle and say, okay, here's the gap pieces. Here's the pieces that can fill your gap for you.
Thank you. Jeff.
Well, thank you, Pam and Julie. I have a kind of a question. We're shifting gears a little bit here, but I'm wondering, Pam, what core belief or principle has most consistently guided your leadership decisions, especially in challenging moments?
Oh, that's a hard question. I would say, honestly, just being a servant to those who are there and empathizing with them and really understanding that everybody's needs are different. And so listening through that and just serving what they need. And I think that goes through classroom, serving what parents and teachers and other colleagues need, going into the ESU level and being a special education director, of serving those that work for you and providing time of ease. One of the things we talk about in our program is even just being there when things are hard for them, just being the shoulder to listen, because sometimes you just need that person. And so I think just being a servant to the education field and helping it grow and wanting the best for the people within it is probably the biggest thing that has guided me.
Yeah, I think if you were going to listen back to the other 6, what did you say? We were on 7 episodes now. Servant leadership is a theme for sure. Another theme that keeps coming up is collaboration. And I know that this will make sense to you we don't get anything done in the rural work of education unless we have lots of partners and lots of friends to help. So in terms of collaboration, like the Get Set work we did with Seed, how do you get that to turn into meaningful, sustained impact rather than just good intentions? We're going to get together and chat about some things. How do you really get it to turn into something that has impact on kids and sticks?
Well, I think the thing we have to do, I am so data driven. I am a data driven decision maker. It is who I am at the core of everything. I'm a problem solver and a data decision maker. I think you have to have some data to start your conversation out, because even in the classroom, you can't argue with data necessarily, right? If things are happening and processes are going, you can't argue. So I think you have to start out with knowing where you're at. That's where we came at with that document. You've got to know where you're at before you can make strong, impactful change. Because if you're going to just repeat what you've done and have the conversations on what you've done, you won't get anywhere. And so when you can identify gaps, it's the same in transition, secondary transition. When you can identify gaps for students, you can actually solve so much more, because then you have a focused effort that you are putting forward. And so it helps people kind of focus those conversations into 1 or 2 strategic things, and then really getting people to realize, okay, what can we implement? Even if someone wanted to implement Get Set Nebraska, maybe they're not ready this year, but what can they do to implement that in the future? And so it guides the discussions of looking at where are our gaps, what can we do, and how can we get there?
Yeah, and I've been in some of your presentations and been able to work on you with some different teams. And she's not kidding about being a data nerd, people. She's for real. And what I love about the way your brain does that with collaboration is you can take ESU 13 data, NDE data, Get Set data, children and families data, and you're able to organize those people in collaboration to really find the through line and the trends that support the work. And clearly, Get Set has had that lasting impact. And now it's going to go live in NCLN and continue to support our educators across the state. So just cannot say enough good about that work. So looking ahead, let's think as you go full circle and back into your classroom, looking ahead, what's one shift in educational leadership that you believe is really essential in serving our students for the future?
Oh, I think and I'm biased, granted, I believe a focus on data and data-driven goals is so critical, because, and I was at NCSA yesterday, and that was the focus too of the presentation. So you can imagine I was very excited about those things. But really, it doesn't matter what level you are leading, even if it's back in the classroom, as long as you focus on what people need and use data to identify that, you can do amazing things. And so as a leader, we have to focus on what our staff needs. As Get Set Nebraska project manager, we have to focus on what our schools and our districts across the state need. And as a classroom teacher, we have to focus on what are the individual micro level things that a student needs, and how can we impact that to meet the needs of parents and teachers. And so I think just really getting people to understand that connection, because like Julie said, it is a gift I think I have of looking at data and seeing those connections, but I think everybody can learn that. And I think everybody can be there too. And when you do that, you can have amazing collaborative experiences happen, whatever level it is in education.
Well, thank you for teaching us some of those lessons. It is important work. So you started by telling us your journey and how connected it was to the people who helped you along. So to wrap this up, you are an incredible leader in our state, but you've also had the opportunity to work with several incredible leaders in your career. So what's the best piece of leadership advice, or the worst, that you've ever gotten or would share for our audience today?
I think the piece of the biggest thing that I carry with me is something that Laura Barrett said. I will call her out on that one. She said, sometimes you have to go with your champions. Sometimes you have these great ideas and things are happening, but there are so many other elements in place that go on, that go with your champions. And then you can show that things do work, and that what the ideas that we have and the ideas that we're trying to make change, because change is not easy to make. It's very difficult. And we found the biggest part that comes in as a barrier is time. And so by champions, I don't mean people that are only willing to do it, because we have so many people that want to implement things, but there are barriers out there. So you have to go where the capacity is at that moment. In time. And so that's really kind of where I kind of convert that piece of advice into, is go where the capacity exists right now. Go with those champions who have the ability to bring that full force. And so you can see if it works. And by doing that, you actually can support and give data that provides resources to other people to say, this is what should be happening.
Wow. Thank you so much for your time today. And thank you for everything you've done for our state. I mean, David City hit the jackpot, right? And it just makes me smile to see you get to go full circle back into a classroom and serve kids. So I'm going to toss it back to Andrew to wrap us up and take us home.
Hey, thanks, Julie. And Pam, thanks, for all your insights today. I find myself throughout today's entire conversation sort of piecing together, I think, some of the things that you shared there with, one, it's getting that data, and then two, it's being able to sort of mine what you have in a way that's productive, and then to bring that out into a way that you can share that with others. But as you said, the context within which people engage in that and what they're currently involved in needs consideration, right? and that at least what I'm taking away from today's conversation is kind of thinking about kind of the intertwining of some of the different threads that we got on today, and how they all are related, and that a leader is responsible. And that's what makes this work, I think, kind of challenging and tough, and worth investing in and growing in, is how do you sort of bring all of those together in a way that allows you to start off by saying, I hope we get 6 districts and we got 4, to get to a place where you reach an entire state and 100 plus districts. And I think it's just a real testament to your work and your effort. And gosh, am I jealous you're getting the chance to go back to the classroom as well, like Julie was saying. So thank you so much for all of your service through that effort, through the ESUs. And we look forward to continuing to follow you at David City. So everybody that is listening in, we would love to have you join us again next time, which will be on May 1st. Gosh dang, we're already into May, which is crazy. We'll be at the NETA conference, which is our state ed tech conference for those that maybe aren't familiar with that event. And so we'll have a techie style conversation next go around from Kearney, Nebraska. So we're looking forward to that one. And so thanks everybody for your time. Have a great rest of your Friday. And we'll see you here in a couple weeks.